Hello friends, this video on photosynthesis in higher plants part 23 is brought to you by examfear.com. No more fear from exam. Now with this we have reached almost towards the end of this lesson. Now before we conclude this lesson, we would like to discuss about the factors which affect photosynthesis. Now we have discussed the concept of photosynthesis, the light reactions, dark reactions, how it happens in C3 plants, how it happens in C4 plants. Now this lesson is very conceptual and you should understand the concepts behind the process of photosynthesis. Now, before we conclude, let us quickly see what are the factors that affect the process of photosynthesis. When I say affect, that means there are certain external factors, not only external, they can be external or internal, that can affect the rate of photosynthesis. It can make the process faster or it can make the process slower. So, what are those factors? Well, these factors can be external or internal. When I say external factors, it can be any environmental changes or anything which is supplied to the plant from outside. When I say internal, it can be anything related to the plant structure, maybe the plant structure, the plant behavior, the genetic feature in a plant, growth of a plant. So all those factors would be internal factors that might affect photosynthesis. Now let us quickly talk about some of the external factors. Now some of the important external factors would be light, temperature, water and carbon dioxide concentration. So these are some of the important external factors that can affect the rate of photosynthesis. So let us quickly see how each of these factors affect the rate of photosynthesis. So we'll start with light. As we all know, light is extremely important for the process to take place. Without light, photosynthesis cannot take place. Correct? So let us see how the rate changes with the intensity of light. If the intensity of light is increased, what will happen? Will the rate of photosynthesis also increase, or the rate of photosynthesis will decrease, or it will not have any effect? So let us have a quick look. So this is how the rate of photosynthesis will change. Now the y-axis denotes the rate of photosynthesis and the x-axis denotes the light intensity. Actually speaking, the rate of photosynthesis is not determined by any one factor. It is dependent on multiple factors like light, temperature, water, carbon dioxide concentration. So since it is dependent on multiple factors, so there are chances that as long as it is dominated by one factor, the other factors might not bring about a change. Right? So let us try to see the dependency on light. Now as we increase the intensity of light, initially it is seen in the lower intensities, it is seen that the rate of photosynthesis also increases. But gradually it reaches a saturation point beyond which even though the intensity of light increases, but the rate of photosynthesis does not increase. Now why does that happen? Because how is photosynthesis dependent on light? Because when we increase the intensity of light, the light energy which is absorbed, or the wavelength of light which is absorbed by the chlorophyll molecules also increases, and that is why the rate increases. Now after the saturation point, breakdown of chlorophyll occurs, and due to breakdown of chlorophyll, there is no further increase in the rate of photosynthesis. So there is a linear relationship between the rate of photosynthesis and light intensity only at lower values of intensities. But the saturation occurs only at 10% of full sunlight. So this saturation point is received only when the sunlight intensity is only 10% of full sunlight. So you can imagine how much less light is required for the process of photosynthesis to take place. That is why not too much of light is required for a plant to perform photosynthesis. Even if little bit light is there, they will be able to perform it, because you really do not need that much of strong light, because it reaches a saturation point only when the light intensity is 10% of full sunlight. So that is the saturation point, and it can survive even below that point as well. So that is why the plant generally dies due to lack of sunlight only when it is kept in a place where there is no sunlight at all, or extremely less sunlight. Otherwise, even if the area is little shady, but if it is receiving at least some sunlight, that should be fine. So let us look at the next factor, that is temperature. Now, temperature optimum varies for different plants. Now, it is seen that at low intensities or at low or medium light intensity and at a moderate temperature, the rate of photosynthesis is independent of temperature. So, this is how it varies. Now, initially, when the light intensity is very less, that time the rate of photosynthesis increases with the increase in light intensity. That is what we saw in the previous slide. Now that is true only when the temperature is like moderate. It is neither very high nor very low. So during the low intensity time, if the temperature is moderate, then there will be no change in the rate of photosynthesis because of temperature. But now when the light intensity is very high, so when the light intensity becomes very high, the rate of photosynthesis becomes stagnant. I mean, the rate of photosynthesis does not depend on light intensity anymore. So that time the rate of photosynthesis is determined by temperature. How? Because photosynthesis is a photochemical process. A lot of chemical reactions take place, and chemical reactions involve enzymes. Enzymes control the reactions, and the action of enzymes are all temperature dependent. So some enzymes become active at a particular temperature. Their activity increases with increase in temperature, and then again at a certain temperature they are denatured, that is, they are spoiled. So they will not be active anymore. So beyond that temperature, the rate of photosynthesis will fall. So the rate of photosynthesis will change with temperature in this fashion. So if you see at extremely low temperature or moderate temperature, it is not affected a lot, but gradually with increase in temperature, as the light intensity also increases, the role of temperature becomes more important. Now after a certain saturation point, the enzymes get denatured, and that is why the rate of photosynthesis falls abruptly. So this is how the variation of temperature, photosynthesis rate happens with temperature. Now this value is known as the temperature optimum. This temperature optimum is different for different plants. Some plants can survive at very high temperatures, some plants cannot survive at that much high temperature. So enzyme dependent reactions are completely temperature controlled because the action of enzymes largely depend on temperature. The third factor, that is water. So let us look at the next factor, that is water. Now needless to say, we all know how important water is for the process of photosynthesis. Now let us see what happens if we increase or decrease the amount of water supplied to a plant. How will it affect the rate of photosynthesis? Now, if we do not provide sufficient water to a plant, that can cause major problem in a plant. Why? That's because if there is lack of water, that may cause closing of stomata. Because why does the stomata open? Stomata opens not only to take in carbon dioxide, but also when the stomata opens, some water is lost in the form of water vapor, and that is what we know as transpiration. You remember the process of transpiration in the leaves? You have the stomata. When the stomata opens, water is lost in the form of water vapor. When the water is lost to the atmosphere, a transpiration pull is created, and that is how water is pulled up. So water from the soil is pulled up through the water conducting vessels called xylem, from roots to stems to different parts of the plant. Now, if there is not enough water in the soil, because if you do not provide enough water to the soil, there will be lack of water. In that case, in order that the plant do not lose too much of water, and in order to prevent dehydration, stomata will not open. And if stomata doesn't open, with the fear of transpiration, what will happen? If the stomata doesn't open, it will not be able to take in carbon dioxide. So carbon fixation will not be able to take place. If carbon fixation is not happening, photosynthesis will not be able to take place. So water plays a very major role in controlling the process of photosynthesis, and therefore water should be supplied in adequate quantities to the plants. Now last but not the least, carbon dioxide concentration. As we all know, carbon dioxide fixation is the first step of biosynthetic phase of photosynthesis. That is, in the dark reactions, whether we talk about the Calvin cycle or the Hatch and Slack pathway, the first step is carboxylation or carbon fixation. So we need carbon dioxide there. So if the concentration of carbon dioxide is less, it will cause a serious problem. Now anyways, we know that in the atmosphere, carbon dioxide is present in only 0.03% when compared to other gases like nitrogen or oxygen. Now, if the concentration of carbon dioxide increases, it will definitely increase the rate of carbon fixation. Now, when the rate of carbon fixation increases, the rate of photosynthesis will also increase. But this will also reach a saturation point. Why? That's because now initially, let us suppose this is carbon dioxide concentration. Let us suppose this is the rate of photosynthesis and this is the carbon dioxide concentration. Now initially when the carbon dioxide concentration increases, the rate of photosynthesis also increases. But this also reaches a saturation point. So when does this saturation point come? Now what happens is at low intensity, that means at low light intensity, both the C3 and C4 plants are independent of carbon dioxide concentration. Now please remember that when the light intensity is less, then the rate of photosynthesis is dependent only on light intensity. It is independent of temperature, it is independent of carbon dioxide concentration. So these factors, temperature and carbon dioxide concentration, comes into picture only when the light intensity is high. So at high light intensities, increase in rate of photosynthesis is observed when the concentration of carbon dioxide increases. But it reaches a saturation point. When will that saturation point come? When too much of carbon dioxide has already been fixed, when too much of carbon dioxide fixation has done, because you always need a primary acceptor of carbon dioxide as well. Now when too much of fixation is already done, you don't have any more molecules to fix the carbon dioxide. So there is nobody to fix it. So the process of carbon dioxide fixation cannot take place. So even though the concentration of carbon dioxide is increasing outside, but there is no acceptor to accept the carbon dioxide and fix it. So carboxylation cannot take place, and that is why it reaches a saturation point. And it has also been observed that in C3 plants, they respond to higher CO2 concentration by showing higher rate of photosynthesis. So these are the factors which affect the rate of photosynthesis. So with this, we have reached towards the end of this lesson. Thank you. Please visit www.examfear.com to watch more videos, attempt free online test, get free study material, find tutors and mentors. Thank you once again.